Blood stained the imported Italian marble of the penthouse floor. Gabriel thought he had her trapped for her own good. He thought he knew everything about his loyal, plus-size assistant. Until the dead of night, when a cheap plastic burner phone rang from beneath her mattress, unraveling every lie. Harper Hayes was not a woman who blended into the background, no matter how much she might have wanted to in her line of work. At 230 pounds, with a wardrobe consisting almost entirely of sharp, custom-tailored Marina Rinaldi suits that hugged her generous curves, she was a commanding presence. She was also the only person on the eastern seaboard who could tell Gabriel Rossi no and live to see the sunrise. Gabriel was the head of the Rossi Syndicate, a ruthless enterprise disguised behind the gleaming glass facade of Rossi Global Logistics in Manhattan. I was a man of terrifying stillness, with cold obsidian eyes and a penchant for wearing $50,000 Patek Philippe watches that he occasionally used to crack jaws. For 3 years, Harper had been his executive assistant. In reality, she was his fixer, his strategist, and the only anchor keeping him tethered to sanity in a world built on blood. The shift in their dynamic happened on a rainy Tuesday outside Del Frisco's Double Eagle Steakhouse on 6th Avenue. Harper had been reviewing the quarterly laundering ledgers on her iPad, waiting under the awning while Gabriel finished a negotiation inside. Suddenly, the glass doors shattered outward. Gunfire tore through the humid New York air. 3 men in tactical gear poured out of a black unmarked van, leveling suppressed automatic weapons at Gabriel, who had just stepped onto the pavement. Without a second thought, Harper threw her substantial weight forward. She slammed into Gabriel, her soft, heavy body, knocking his solid frame to the wet asphalt, just as a spray of bullets turned the brick wall behind them into shrapnel. "Get down!" she screamed, hauling him behind the armored chassis of their waiting Cadillac Escalade. Gabriel's security detail returned fire, transforming the chaotic street into a war zone. Through it all, Gabriel didn't look at the shooters. He looked at Harper. He stared at the way she was draped over him, her chest heaving, a graze on her cheek bleeding freely. Something dark, possessive, and feral snapped behind his eyes. Within minutes, the sirens wailed from Midtown North Precinct, and the attackers fled. But Gabriel didn't take Harper to a hospital. He dragged her into the secondary extraction vehicle, his grip bruising her thick wrist. "What are you doing? I need to contact Matteo to secure the safe houses," Harper argued, trying to pry his fingers off her as the SUV sped down the FDR drive. "Matteo can handle himself," Gabriel growled, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. "You're off the grid, as of right now. Gabriel, be reasonable. I have files at my apartment. I don't care about the files." He pulled her closer, his gaze dropping to the blood on her cheek. He pulled a silk Tom Ford pocket square from his jacket and pressed it against her skin. "They aimed at you, Harper. One of them had you in his sights. You think I'm going to let you walk back into your ground-floor apartment in Queens?" Before she could formulate a proper counter-argument, they were pulling into the subterranean garage of his private, undisclosed residence. A $60 million penthouse in Tribeca that officially belonged to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. The elevator opened directly into the sprawling, multi-level apartment. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. The floors were heated imported marble, and the walls were adorned with original Rothko paintings. It was a fortress of unimaginable luxury. "You'll stay here," Gabriel commanded, shrugging off his ruined suit jacket. He walked over to a smart panel on the wall and punched in a sequence. The heavy steel elevator doors locked with a resounding magnetic thud. Harper dropped her ruined Prada tote bag. "You can't lock me in here. I'm your assistant, Gabriel, not a hostage. You are whatever I need you to be to stay breathing," he replied, stalking toward her. He towered over her, though Harper stubbornly held her ground. She was used to men underestimating her because of her size. She knew how to take up space. She squared her broad shoulders, tilting her chin up to meet his glare. "I am not a fragile little bird, Gabriel. I've handled cartel threats. I've moved $40 million in dirty cash through offshore accounts while eating a bagel. I don't need to be locked in a tower." Gabriel reached out, his calloused thumb gently tracing the line of her soft jaw, bypassing the bloody cloth. The touch sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. "You think this is about you being fragile?" he murmured, his breath ghosting over her lips. "This is about me, Harper. I saw that bullet miss your head by 2 inches. I am not a reasonable man. And until I have the head of whoever ordered that hit on a silver platter, you aren't leaving this penthouse. The biometric locks recognize only my fingerprints. The glass is rated to stop a .50 caliber round. You are completely, utterly secure." "Gabriel," she breathed, the anger momentarily derailed by the sheer, suffocating intensity of his proximity. "Your clothes will be brought up. Whatever food you want will be delivered," he stated, stepping back and slipping his mask of cold indifference back into place. "Don't try to break out, Harper. You know what happens to people who try to cross my security." With that, he stepped into a secondary service elevator she hadn't even known existed, scanning his palm. The doors slid shut, leaving Harper alone in the cavernous, silent penthouse. She stood frozen for a long moment, the adrenaline of the shootout fading into a dull ache. She looked around the magnificent, sterile cage. Then a slow, grim smile touched her lips. Gabriel Rossi was a genius, a mastermind of the criminal underworld. But he had made one fatal miscalculation. He thought he knew who she really was. 3 days passed. 72 hours of suffocating isolation, wrapped in high thread count Egyptian cotton. Gabriel visited every evening. He didn't come to talk about business, which unsettled Harper more than anything else. He arrived precisely at 8 o'clock, bringing elaborate dinners from Le Bernardin or Carbone. He would watch her eat with a heavy, hooded gaze, pouring her expensive Barolo wine and asking about her comfort. It was maddening. Harper was used to a life of high-stakes chaos. She was used to being the invisible engine that ran the Rossi empire. She wasn't used to being pampered, and she certainly wasn't used to the way Gabriel's eyes tracked the plush curve of her hips when she walked across the living room. On the 3rd night, he brought a massive garment bag. "I noticed you were washing the same 2 blouses," Gabriel said, dropping the bag on the velvet sofa. "I had a tailor from Bergdorf Goodman send some things." Harper unzipped the bag, expecting to find the generic, shapeless garments that high-end designers usually relegated to plus-size women. Instead, she found exquisite, custom-fitted pieces, a deep emerald silk wrap dress that would perfectly accentuate her heavy breasts and cinch her waist. Cashmere sweaters, tailored wide-leg trousers. "You had my measurements," she noted, her voice dangerously quiet as she looked back at him. "Am a thorough man, Harper." "You're a control freak," she shot back, dropping the dress. "I want my laptop. I want my real phone. You have me completely severed from the world." I don't even know who shot at us at Del Frisco's. Gabriel poured himself a glass of whiskey at the crystal decanter station. It was the Moretti family. They made a play for the waterfront docks. They failed. The Morettis? Harper frowned, her sharp mind immediately whirring into gear. That doesn't make sense. Lorenzo Moretti is a coward. He wouldn't sanction a daylight hit in Midtown, not with the FBI breathing down his neck over that Rico case. Someone else put them up to it. Gabriel paused, the glass halfway to his lips. He looked at her, a mixture of admiration and dark amusement on his face. This is why I need you safe. That beautiful brain of yours. You're right. Lorenzo was backed by a third party. I'm tearing the city apart to find out who. Let me help you, she pleaded, stepping closer. She placed a soft, plump hand on his rigid arm. Gabriel, please. I'm going crazy in here. He looked down at her hand, his expression softening for a fraction of a second before hardening into stone. He reached out, his hand gripping the back of her thick neck, pulling her in until their chests brushed. The contrast between his rock-hard torso and her soft, yielding body was electric. You help me by staying alive, he whispered roughly. You help me by being the one thing in my life I don't have to worry about. You are mine to protect, Harper. Accept it. He let her go abruptly, finishing his drink in one swallow. I have to meet the underbosses. Lock the bedroom door from the inside when you sleep. When the elevator doors sealed behind him, Harper let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Gabriel's obsession was becoming dangerous, crossing the line from professional paranoia into deeply personal territory. But he was wrong about the Morettis, and he was wrong about her being safe. Harper walked into the master suite. She bypassed the Bergdorf clothes, bypassed the marble soaking tub, and went straight to the massive oak vanity. She knelt on the floor, her knees aching slightly against the hardwood edge of the rug, and reached her arm all the way under the heavy wooden cabinet, feeling along the false bottom she had installed months ago, long before she was ever locked in here. Because Harper wasn't just Gabriel's assistant. She was the one who picked this penthouse for him. She was the one who supervised its renovation. Her fingers brushed against a piece of heavy-duty duct tape. She ripped it away, pulling out a cheap, plastic, prepaid Nokia burner phone. Gabriel thought he was the apex predator in New York. He didn't know that for the past 2 years, his brilliant, unassuming, overweight assistant had been quietly selling his operational blind spots to the federal government. She wasn't an FBI agent. She was a mercenary, a broker. The underground called her the Oracle. She was the one who had manipulated the Morettis into attacking Gabriel, hoping the crossfire would give her the distraction she needed to wipe the offshore accounts clean and disappear to a non-extradition country. But Gabriel hadn't let her go. He had grabbed her. And now, she was trapped in a cage of her own making, sitting on $40 million of digital cryptocurrency she couldn't access without a secure terminal. Harper powered the burner phone on. The bright, pixelated screen illuminated her face in the dark bedroom. No service. Of course. Gabriel had activated the signal jammers. She needed to get to the easternmost window in the guest bathroom, the only spot in the penthouse where a micro-fracture in the jammer's radius allowed a fleeting 2G signal to bleed through. She walked quickly to the bathroom, standing on the edge of the tub, pressing the cheap plastic phone directly against the reinforced glass. 1 bar. She rapidly typed a text message to a secure Swiss number. Operation compromised. Rossi has me locked in Tribeca. Need extraction. Before she could press send, the quiet hum of the penthouse was shattered. It wasn't an alarm. It wasn't the elevator. It was a ringtone. But it wasn't coming from the phone in her hand. Harper froze, the blood draining from her face. The shrill electronic chirping was echoing from the living room. Someone else's phone was ringing inside the locked, impenetrable penthouse. She crept out of the bathroom, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. She walked down the hallway, the sound growing louder. It was coming from beneath the heavy cushions of the velvet sofa where Gabriel had just been sitting. She reached between the cushions, her trembling fingers brushing against cold metal. She pulled out a sleek, encrypted satellite phone. Gabriel's personal line, the one he supposedly kept on his person at all times. He had intentionally left it behind. She stared at the caller ID flashing on the screen. Lorenzo Moretti. Why was the man who just tried to kill Gabriel calling Gabriel's private encrypted phone? Before Harper could make sense of it, a cold, metallic click echoed through the silent penthouse. I told you to lock the bedroom door, Harper. Gabriel's voice came from the shadows of the hallway, smooth, dark, and utterly devoid of mercy. He stepped into the moonlight, a suppressed Beretta resting casually in his hand. He hadn't left the penthouse at all. He looked at the burner phone clutched in her left hand and his own satellite phone in her right. It seems, Gabriel said, a dangerous smile spreading across his lips. We both have secrets. The silence in the penthouse was absolute, broken only by the erratic, shallow breaths Harper drew as she stared down the barrel of Gabriel's suppressed Beretta 92 FS. He stepped fully into the ambient glow of the city lights, pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking less like a businessman and more like the apex predator of the New York underworld. You didn't leave, Harper stated, her voice remarkably steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. Her plush, heavy body was tense under the luxurious emerald silk of the Bergdorf Goodman dress. Gabriel lowered the weapon, though he did not holster it. He walked toward her with the slow, deliberate grace of a panther. I haven't left this building in 3 days, mia cara. The underboss meetings were conducted via encrypted proxy. Did you really think I would leave you unguarded? He reached out, snatching the cheap Nokia burner phone from her left hand and his own ringing satellite phone from her right. He silenced Lorenzo Moretti's incoming call with a flick of his thumb, tossing both devices onto the plush velvet sofa. The hit outside Del Frisco's, Harper breathed, her sharp mind connecting the brutal dots. It wasn't a failure. It was a theatrical performance. You and Lorenzo staged it. Lorenzo is a dog who performs when I offer him a bone, Gabriel replied, closing the distance between them until Harper was forced to back up, her soft hips colliding with the heavy oak vanity. I noticed the bleed in our offshore accounts 3 weeks ago. $40 million, vanishing through a labyrinth of shell corporations, so sophisticated that my top forensic accountants were left chasing ghosts. There is only one person in my organization with the intellect, the access, and the sheer audacity to orchestrate that. He stepped into her personal space. The heat radiating from his large frame was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the cold marble floor beneath her bare feet. If you knew I was stealing from you, Harper whispered, tilting her chin up to meet his dark, obsessive gaze. Why not just put a bullet in my head? Why lock me in here? Why buy me clothes? Why buy? Gabriel's eyes darkened, dropping to the deep cleavage spilling from the wrap dress, then tracing the generous, rounded curve of her waist. "Because I don't want you dead, Harper. I want you mine. I knew you were the Oracle. I knew you were selling blind spots to the feds. I orchestrated the hit to isolate you, to strip away your contacts, and to force you into a cage where the only person you could rely on is me." He pulled an ultra-thin tablet from his jacket pocket and tapped the screen, holding it up. "I know exactly what you took from me. $39,900,000. Gabriel read the figures with a cold, smooth edge to his voice. "A masterful theft. You utilized the Moretti family's supply lines to mask the digital paper trail. Brilliant. Truly." Harper didn't cower. She was a woman who commanded respect, her thick, strong thighs planted firmly on the ground. She reached out, her soft, plump hand wrapping around his wrist, pushing the tablet down. "I did what I had to do to survive in your world, Gabriel. You are a monster. You destroy everything you touch." "And yet," Gabriel murmured, his free hand sliding around the thick, soft curve of her waist, pulling her heavy body flush against his hard, muscular frame. "You threw yourself in front of a bullet for me 3 days ago. If you wanted to run with the money, you should have let Lorenzo's men shoot me. Why didn't you, Harper?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded with a dangerous, unspoken truth. Harper's breath hitched. She felt the hard press of his weapon against her hip, a terrifying reminder of who this man was. But she also felt the frantic, heavy beating of his heart against her breasts. "Because," she admitted, her voice dropping to a husky whisper, "I am just as corrupted as you are." Gabriel let out a low, predatory groan. He dropped the tablet. His hands tangled in her thick, dark hair, tilting her head back, and he captured her lips in a bruising, punishing kiss. It was a collision of violence and passion. Harper kissed him back with equal ferocity, her soft hands gripping the lapels of his suit, accepting the dark, twisted reality that she didn't want to escape him. She wanted to conquer him. Their desperate embrace was abruptly shattered by a sound that made Gabriel's blood run cold. It was the heavy, metallic clank of the primary elevator locking mechanisms disengaging. Gabriel tore himself away from Harper, his suppressed beretta instantly snapping up toward the hallway. His eyes were wide with a rare, genuine shock. "The biometric locks. Lorenzo," Harper said, her strategic mind immediately shifting from passion back to survival. "You said you gave him a bone to stage the hit. But Lorenzo is greedy. If he knew I was the Oracle, he knew I had access to the 40 million. He didn't call your phone to report in. He called to ping its exact location inside the penthouse to bypass the security mainframe. Never trust a starving dog with the keys to the butcher shop. A Rossi Syndicate proverb. "He played me," Gabriel snarled, the realization dawning on him. The elevator doors began to ascending rapidly toward the penthouse level. "He's sending a hit squad. They aren't here to capture us. They're here to slaughter us and take the digital ledgers." Harper didn't panic. Her heart pounded, but her mind was ice cold. She looked at Gabriel. "What is the play, boss?" Gabriel's lips curved into a dark, lethal smile. He loved that she didn't break. He loved her strength. "We initiate the burn protocol," he commanded, his voice returning to its authoritative gravel. "Memorize these steps, Harper. We have 60 seconds. Emergency protocol. Alpha 7. Sever external communications. Disable the localized cell tower routing on the control panel to prevent Lorenzo from tracking our digital footprint. Activate the EMP charge. Detonate the localized pulse in the primary elevator shaft to trap the ascending strike team between floors. Access the secondary armory. Retrieve the submachine guns and Kevlar plating hidden behind the Master Suite's false marble wall. Evacuate via the service duct. Utilize the reinforced maintenance shaft leading directly to the subterranean parking garage. Harper moved with surprising agility for a woman of her size. She rushed to the smart panel on the wall, her thick fingers flying across the glass screen, executing the command to sever the comms. Gabriel punched a sequence into a hidden keypad behind a Rothko painting. A heavy, vibrating thump echoed through the floorboards. The EMP detonated in the shaft. The hum of the ascending elevator abruptly died, followed by the muffled shouts of trapped men below. That will hold them for exactly 4 minutes before they manually pry the doors open and climb the cables, Gabriel stated, tossing her a lightweight Kevlar vest from the hidden armory. Put this on. Harper strapped the vest over her silk dress, the rigid material pressing uncomfortably against her heavy breasts. Gabriel handed her a compact Glock 19. She checked the magazine with practiced efficiency, racking the slide. Service duct, now, Gabriel ordered. They sprinted to the back of the penthouse, prying open a heavy steel grate. The maintenance shaft was narrow, but Gabriel had designed it to accommodate heavy equipment. Harper slid down the ladder first, her hands burning against the metal rungs, her soft thighs absorbing the shock of the rapid descent. Gabriel followed closely above her. They hit the concrete floor of the subterranean garage, just as a massive explosion rocked the penthouse high above them. Lorenzo's men had blown the elevator doors. "To the corner bay," Gabriel shouted, grabbing her hand. They sprinted across the polished concrete. Waiting in the shadows of the VIP sector was Gabriel's emergency extraction vehicle. It wasn't a conspicuous SUV. It was a matte black, armored Aston Martin DBS Superleggera. Gabriel slid into the driver's seat, the V12 engine roaring to life with a deafening growl. Harper threw her heavy frame into the passenger side, slamming the door just as 2 black vans smashed through the garage's toll barriers. Automatic gunfire lit up the dark garage. Bullets pinged off the Aston Martin's bulletproof chassis. "Hold on!" Gabriel roared, throwing the car into gear. The tires smoked, screaming in protest against the concrete as the car launched forward like a missile. He violently spun the steering wheel, drifting the heavy vehicle around a concrete pillar, directly ramming the side of the leading van. The impact violently jarred Harper in her seat, the seatbelt biting deeply into her soft shoulder, but the van spun out of control, crashing into a row of parked cars. They blasted up the exit ramp, bursting out into the chaotic, neon-lit streets of Tribeca. Gabriel merged seamlessly into the heavy Manhattan traffic, losing the pursuers in the labyrinth of city blocks. Harper was panting, her chest heaving as she stared at the blurred city lights flashing past the window. She looked over at Gabriel. His face was stoic, his hands gripping the leather steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly from the fading adrenaline. "Teterboro Airport," Gabriel replied, not taking his eyes off the road. "My private jet is fueled and waiting. We are leaving the country." He reached into the center console and pulled out a small, heavy velvet pouch, tossing it into her lap. "We lost the 40 million, Gabriel said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "But we are not entirely destitute." Harper opened the pouch. Inside was a collection of survival tools that proved Gabriel Rossi was a man who always planned for the apocalypse. Remaining escape assets: $4 million in flawless, uncut South African diamonds. 2 encrypted satellite phones equipped with direct lines to the Corsican syndicate in Europe. A forged set of elite diplomatic passports under the aliases Alexander and Victoria Kensington. The encrypted flash drive containing the blackmail files on every corrupt politician in the state of New York. Harper stared at the diamonds glittering in the dim light of the dashboard. She looked at the passports. Alexander and Victoria Kensington, husband and wife. "You planned this," Harper whispered, looking back at him. "You knew Lorenzo might betray you. You had this ready." Gabriel finally looked at her. The cold, ruthless Mafia Boss was gone, replaced by a man looking at the only woman who truly understood the darkness inside his soul. He reached over, resting his large hand affectionately on her thick, soft thigh, squeezing gently. "I plan for every contingency, Harper," Gabriel murmured softly. "I told you, you are mine to protect. We are going to Paris. We are going to rebuild the empire. And then, we are going to hunt Lorenzo Moretti down and bury him." Harper leaned her head back against the headrest, a dark, victorious smile slowly spreading across her face. She was no longer just the plus-size assistant hiding in the shadows. She was the queen on Gabriel Rossi's bloody chessboard, and the game had only just begun. The truth is finally out, and the game has changed forever. Gabriel and Harper's explosive escape is only the beginning of their dark, twisted journey together. Will they survive the wrath of the syndicates, or will their dangerous secrets ultimately destroy them both? If you enjoyed this thrilling mafia romance, please do not forget to smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends so you never miss an episode of our gripping stories.